Hello, welcome back to all of you. Today we will be taking up the subject of figuring out good and evil. This is one of many topics in the series entitled Karma, Choice and Destiny. Sister Denise, hello and welcome.
Thank you. Hello.
So, figuring out good and evil. There are a number of souls watching this show who have had this question in their mind. And what is important is for them to understand in any aspect of my life, at any given juncture in my life, am I making the right choice or the wrong choice? And in which direction am I going? Am I going in the direction of good or am I going in the direction of evil? How do I know?
In addition to that, we also have to look at where am I coming from? Because where I'm going is connected with where I'm coming from. As we've also mentioned sometimes, a lot of people suffer from trauma. When you suffer from trauma, it's like something really negative was experienced by you. It was a shock factor. It was something probably incomprehensible. A lot of trauma happens in childhood, where the person is so fragile and vulnerable that you just have no defense against it, you have no way to process it. And in many cases it'll go straight to the subconscious. And there it will take on a monstrous form and it will drive your life. I think when we're looking at where we're going, we need to know that this driver is orienting us in a way that would be negative. In some ways, we need to say, yes, I have to go beyond good and evil. But on the other hand, we need to be able to identify clearly what is right, what is wrong. We make choices without taking into consideration where we come from. This is a mistake. Because then our choices are not free. In order for us to make free choice, we have to take into consideration all of these influences that are going on that are tending us in these directions. So there are two kinds of sanskaras that a person has. One kind of sanskara are tendencies that you acquire in your childhood through the external moral authorities of parents, educators, and religious leaders, as well as the impact of trauma. Secondly, you have your past karma from a long, long time ago. It's another influence. Then you have your conscience. Your conscience is like a natural mechanism that lets you know what's right and what's wrong, moment by moment. And I think children are very keenly connected with their conscience in childhood. And as life goes on, these other influences that I mentioned before cause a person to doubt the voice of conscience, to shut it down, so that in later life you no longer have access to this mechanism that tells you, and you tend to think of right and wrong according to the external moral authorities and the conditioning that you had. So you're really not free. And you will go down the direction of negativity, thinking it's positive. This is the challenge.
When a person has evil thrust upon them, especially when that person is a child, and you are then in a position where you have to deal with everything that comes with that, to become an individual who just puts out good, that takes an exceptional amount of substance from that individual, doesn't it?
It does, and I think you have to do your inner work. And again, this is an example where the psychological and the spiritual need to work together and to converge. So this has to be articulated, and that's a very important area that's not quite been done really, so it's not really available to people, so we have to do that work. What you do from a spiritual angle is you go to your essential pure self. When you meditate, one of the things you have to begin with is to put forth the thought that I am a pure, peaceful, powerful, loveful, blissful being of light. And reassert and remind yourself that this is my identity. Trauma and evil and so on, these are something that's from the outside and it's other than myself. I think a problem happens when a person absorbs that negativity, that evil, into themselves without any barrier, which happens in childhood, and they get contaminated and poisoned and corrupted. And so it's a matter of getting uncorrupted. And so for that you have to really do deep pain work, which is psychological, and you have to do deep spiritual work to return your sense of self to your original identity of a pure, peaceful, powerful, loveful, blissful being of light. And so this is the work in progress.
In previous episodes, we discussed what in spirituality is called the 5 vices, which is greed, ego, anger, lust, and attachment. That list is not closed. There's also fear, revenge, aggression, jealousy, laziness, etc. Is it ever justifiable in terms of the law of karma to conduct oneself in such a manner? Is it ever justifiable?
The mechanism of the law of karma is a calculation. Think of it in monetary terms. If you put what's called black money in your account, it'll be found out. You'll be penalized for it. So it's, I think, not really a matter of justifying operating on the basis of a negative emotion because of mitigating circumstances. The calculation doesn't really look at how you feel or anything like it's okay because of this or that. No. The problem, the initial problem is you took in the trauma and you couldn't do anything about that. Subsequently, you can do something about that. Retroactively, you can. And that is what the psychological work is all about. Now, the problem with trauma is that it produces character defects, or it takes that form. You will find yourself triggered by some circumstance or some incident, which in your mind means that it's justifiable to behave out of jealousy or out of anger or whatever. What's also going on at the same time as that is that you're getting triggered and you have no control over your reaction to it. So spiritual power has to do with gaining control over your reaction so that instead of being reactive, you're proactive. And when you're proactive, you're going to do a calculated action, which will be a pure karma. When you're reactive, it will be negative. So it's more like that than justifying.
So for somebody who's spiritually aware, it is necessary to look at my actions, my words, even my thoughts on a minute-to-minute basis and decide, am I doing good here or am I increasing my karmic debt?
I think better than that, because that's a very tedious process.
Yeah, I'm so glad you said it.
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking, hello,
What's better, I think, is, okay, you begin a regular meditation practice, and you meditate regularly, morning, evening, in between, whatever it is. You create your rhythm of meditation, and your reasoning is that you want to accumulate spiritual power. As you accumulate spiritual power, you also refine your intuition, and you use your intuition to detect moment by moment whether this is good, this is bad. It's a very much less tedious process.
There are people who are good and try to be good in every situation, in every circumstance. They treat others well, they treat themselves well, they treat their bodies well, they maintain good relationships. Unfortunately, we live in a world where virtue is considered to be a weakness. How does somebody who's good protect themselves against others who want to take advantage of their goodness?
Well, there's a very beautiful image that is often mentioned, and that is the symbol of the rose. And virtues are very often symbolized as flowers. And if you make yourself into a beautiful flower, you will get trampled on. That's what happens to beautiful flowers. They're on the floor. So, a rose has thorns. And so the rose is a symbol of the person who has this balance of virtue and spiritual power. If you're just virtuous without any thorns, you're toast. You're finished.
She said toast. Yeah, okay. So what are you saying practically, Sister Denise? Be virtuous and?
What I'm saying is your spiritual practice cannot be limited to the development of virtue.
Oh my goodness. Do you know how few people know that?
No.
A lot of people think, I'm meditating, I'm becoming more virtuous, I'm sorted. And you're saying not.
You're vulnerable.
Oh yeah, that's an awful feeling, to be vulnerable. You're shocking me right now, because spiritually aware people tend to feel very good about being virtuous, and they have reason to, because they're standing in front of God, taking power from Him and becoming virtuous. And that's it.
No, it's a bit religious.
Say what?
Religious people are like that.
And
Spiritual
spirituality
people
differs from that how?
The spiritual person, you've got to get your power going. Religious people never try and become superpowers.
How do you get your power going?
You have to take power from God.
Is that what is meant by Shakti?
Shakti, exactly. Power.
So virtuous does not mean being soft. To be spiritually empowered means to be virtuous and strong.
Yes, virtuous means definitely you're soft, you're beautiful, you are colorful, you are beautiful flowers, delicate flowers, but without thorns you get trampled. So you need to develop your thorns. And some roses have so many thorns nobody can even go near them. You must develop powers of endurance, resilience, the power to face down any aggression, the power to transform things, the power of love, the power of stillness, the power of being able to just be completely unafraid of however negative or threatening some situation may be. And being in your power, in balance with being virtuous, gives you the possibility to become independent of what I call toxic conventional morality.
From what you just said, I'm wondering whether a person who is spiritually empowered knows what to say yes to, whom to say yes to, and what and whom to say no to.
And if they don't, they're in big trouble.
Yeah, the reason I'm asking this, Sister Denise, is because we tend to be easily influenced. Our peers and the people we love the most have a huge deal of influence over us, whether we like to admit it or not. You spoke in another episode about surrounding yourself by the right people. Even the right people influence us, and we allow them to influence us. Where do we go from there?
Part of spiritual practice involves detachment. You have to practice being a completely detached witness. And this enables you to stay free from all of these influences, whether it's from people who are overtly antagonistic towards you, or whether it's from those who are your friends and supporters and so on. Because what you want is to take the influence of God and be completely independent of all those things in many situations. So virtue, power, and detachment.
Is that all? Yeah. Easier said than done. That must be a lifelong journey.
The spiritual practice is a lifelong journey. You know, one comparison between religion and spirituality is that for many people, they learn their religion in childhood, and they retain, even till the end of their life, a childlike relationship with their divinity or God or whoever is the founder of their religion. And they don't really grow.
Childlike relationship. I've never heard that term before. So you are saying, what, grow up?
Oh yeah.
Grow up. How's that? That feels like a punch in the face.
Sorry.
Yeah, okay. So grow up, okay?
But spirituality is a study, it's a path. You have to keep going, and you are all the time met with opposition, difficulties, challenges. Anything and everything will try and make you stop your progress, and you have to, push against it all the time. And this is why it requires staying power and resilience.
Is staying power the same as perseverance?
Yes, perseverance is a good word.
What someone else called stick-to-itiveness?
Stick-to-itiveness, yes.
Right, okay. Yes, Denise, you see, for a lot of people, meandering through the quagmire of life involves so much. And those who are spiritually minded, who are naturally inclined towards being a good person, want to do the right thing, want to do right by themselves and others. It's just that these things that you're talking about, they're not easy to see. The lives of many are like a labyrinth.
Well, it's very true. And this is why I think one thing that actually does help, even if you can't retain all of it, but just to keep exposing oneself, to keep listening to these kinds of ideas, and slowly it goes in and it becomes part of your intuition. Just keep listening to these programs and it will start to inform your life more and more without you having to make too much effort.
Okay, I have to come back to something that you said earlier. It was like one of those bombs that you keep dropping. Okay, hello, I survived it, wow. You're virtuous, but you're vulnerable. So take us through practically. How do I, whether male or female, how do I invoke or emerge my inner Shakti so that I'm not seen as a doormat, a wimp, a easy target, don't get picked upon, don't get laughed at, not sick and broke all the time? How do I do that together with being virtuous?
I think what you're alluding to is people's interpretation of being virtuous as being the same as being codependent. Because a codependent person will make themselves available to be used and abused by someone. And in the culture that we have, especially I was talking about patriarchy and the different ways these laws apply differently to men and women, the different conditioning of girls, children and boy children. A girl is told, you'll never be good enough. And she takes that as an incontrovertible truth. And even when she's grown up, somebody can use that same little message and take her down. So as a child, you haven't yet learned how to protect yourself against these little messages, but as an adult you must. And so when you hear these things, you're not good enough, you'll never make it, you don't have a chance, you're only a woman, you don't need a good job, why do you want to be educated, etc. You have to practice a script so that you can come back from your Shakti and you're still maintaining your cool. You see, if you have a reaction, emotional reaction, then you'll be given another slap in the face from some other little message that goes punch one and punch two, you know. So you have to be smart and sharp with your responses. Somebody says, why do you need an education? I say, well, I have a right to make my own money, don't I? Who's going to pay for me? Oh, well, why don't you have a husband? I had one, he died then. You know, who's going to look after the children? You have to be sharp, you know, and come up with it. And be so conscious of your rights. See, because these messages that come as part of your conditioning come together with a very insidious way of telling people that they don't have any rights and that they shouldn't try and get some, or they shouldn't even try and get informed about what their rights are because they don't deserve, you're only this. How many people say to me, oh, I'm only a housewife? What do you mean, only a housewife? Oh, well, I don't get paid. Well, if you stop being a housewife, see what would happen to the house, you know. And the breadwinner doesn't like that. You say, okay, I have some value.
As many as said, husband had realized. Okay, so what you're saying is that one has to maintain an awareness that one has to become virtuous and understand what good and evil is, but also draw power from the divine in order to increase one's power.
I think I would just interject and say not one has to become virtuous. No, you're already virtuous.
Yeah, except practically that's not necessarily the case.
Well,
because
consider them sleeping.
I have sleeping
Awaken
virtues.
Them. Yes.
I like that. I'm not a bad person. I've got some sleeping virtues. Yeah, okay. Okay, so then?
It means if you think I have to become virtuous, it means I'm not virtuous. That's your identity.
Okay, so change the mindset.
Yeah, change the self-talk.
Okay.
I have to awaken my virtues.
I have to awaken. There you go. Knock, knock. Virtues, your alarm clock has arrived. Yes, okay, great. And everything is there, but for one reason or another, it's been deactivated. When you meditate, you start activating these things. And when you study, you put two and two together and wakey wakey, yeah. Is that what sleeping beauty really means?
Yes.
The beauty within one is asleep.
Yes, and you've been put to sleep by you ate a poison apple, back to Eve, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But that apple, poison apple that they talk about in the fairy tale is that your awareness of yourself as a spiritual being got compromised by some kind of corruption that happened to you to make you lose consciousness. That's a sleeping beauty. And who's going to wake you up with a kiss? Not some nice guy.
Not?
No.
Oh, okay.
But the Supreme Soul will tap you in the soul and say, okay, now wake up.
Ah, the kiss of life.
Mm.
Ah, that. Okay. Okay. Wow, this has been one of those conversations. I'm going to limp off the studio right now and recover from this conversation. So there you go. Thank you. Thank you. So this has been an extremely enlightening half an hour for myself. I hope this has been the same for you. Sister Denise has shared some very important aspects as to how one should recognize what is good and what is evil within yourself and also outside. And also, spirituality does not mean becoming weak in any way. She also spoke about the importance of increasing one's power, which is called Shakti in India. A very deep and powerful message, and I hope you take it to heart, and I do hope we see you again soon. Thank you for joining us. Take care and goodbye.